I have noticed about my own writing that characters were hard. Everybody in my books, male or female, became a middle-aged, sarcastic white guy.
Welcome to the Two Authors Chat Show, an entertaining podcast with two best-selling authors connecting readers with an eclectic array of distinguished guests through lively conversation and interviews. Hosted by mystery, suspense and thriller writers Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey.
Douglas Pratt, we're here on our podcast again. What have you been up to lately?
Pretty nice weekend. We've kind of had ice over here in Tennessee. It melted last week, which has caused a massive amount of mud. Like, you know, for those of you who may or may not know, I have like 5-acre little farm out in the country, and right now all I'm farming is mud. The other night, my wife and I were going to sneak out and go into town, visit some friends about 7 o'clock. So it was nice and dark, and I back out in my Jeep, and as I back out, there's a horse running up my driveway. I mean, it happens to be my horse.
That's where you keep your horse, in the driveway?
Not generally. No, generally she stays in the back pasture, but she had snuck out and found all the nice green grass that the winter grass she hadn't eaten down up front. But so she was traipsing around, and I get my youngest son and I running around through the mud. I'm dressed to go out to dinner, and I'm running, just mucking it up everywhere. Once that ice melts, all we had was just thick layers of mud. So most of yesterday I spent fixing fences and trying to find where she got out, which hopefully we did. If she gets out again, we'll have to fix it again.
Well, I flew to Colorado for a day. So it was my mum's 80th birthday, which is somewhat a landmark, I would say.
I would say so. Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah, happy birthday, Mum. So it was actually the second, but we couldn't get away. My brother and his wife couldn't get away during the week. So we flew out Friday night, landed late Friday night, stayed in a place in Fort Collins, and then drove up the mountain early the next morning to where she lives with a friend of hers, and surprised her at a place that has down the road. And it was lovely. It was great to have the family together awesome. for a beat. Yeah, we spent the day there. We went had a wonderful breakfast with a group of friends. These guys owns this house where she keeps her horse. Lovely log cabin. You know, there's a couple inches of snow down. It's in this canyon. It's a beautiful blue sky day. Everything was really, really good. We went down into old Fort Collins, which has got a really neat downtown area. Just spent the day and then had a really nice meal.
Nice.
And then we flew out early the next morning. So, a lot of flying, which is just such a delight to fly. For some of us that are old farts like me and almost like you, we can remember the days prior to 9/11 when flying was actually an adventure and could be pleasurable. And long gone are those days. It is hell on wheels to fly anywhere. So
I think I'd almost rather drive. I think I'd rather drive 12 hours, up to 12 hours. I think that's like the max before I'd want to fly. It's that much of a pain to get to. So
there's sort of a crossover point, isn't there? That the amount of time it takes you to drive to the airport, wherever your airport is, the amount of time it takes to get, you have to be there so much time beforehand. And then definitely if you're connecting somewhere, you start adding up the time and everything else, then it's almost better to drive.
And throw in rental cars too. If you got to rent a car, figure out how to get away from the airport. It's a lot. So.
Oh yeah, big time. All right. So this week's show is titled Connecting with Readers. And we have a fabulous author by the name of Nick Thacker, who has actually has his own email service similar to MailerLite and MailChimp called Author Email, but it's better value from what I've seen. So he is an expert on connecting with readers. And coming up, we're going to interview Nick, where we don't talk very much about connecting with readers.
Yeah, it went astray.
It went astray. But Nick is a ton of fun, and it's a really enjoyable interview coming up. So we'll get to that in a moment. And first of all, we have a couple of audience questions.
Yes, we do. Our first question actually comes from Bob in Vero Beach, Florida. That would be nice. Vero Beach is a nice, warm area, too. So probably better than Colorado. So
warmer.
His question for us is, do you get to meet many readers at signings or events?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't done many signings or events. I did a book signing very, very early on when I had one book out back in 2019 at a local little bookstore in Davidson, North Carolina, a lovely little bookstore there. And it was fun. Some people that knew me came by, and it was a busy Saturday morning, so people were dropping in and chatting and what have you. So that was very nice. But I've never done a book signing or a real event since. But I have been fortunate. We lived in Key Largo for nearly 3 years, and lots of people, especially divers, and as soon as my books have a lot of diving in them, come down to the Keys. And so I've actually got to meet quite a few readers who are in town. If they'd email me or something and reach out, message, and we'd go meet them for a coffee or something. And on a couple of occasions, we were able to work it out to actually go diving with them, which is a lot of fun. And then we were in Cayman the end of last year for 4 weeks while I was writing Anchor Point. And I think 3 different readers were coming down on holiday at different periods of time while we were there. And the same thing, we got to either meet up or go diving with some readers there.
You're like a full-time experience for you. Like you read his books, he'll take you diving. That's amazing.
Not here in South Texas. The water's a tad cool, and like it's sand forever into the Gulf.
Yes, and it's all brown probably too. So if you're on
it's pretty brown at the moment. Yeah. So what about you, Doug?
I've done a few signings. Not a ton of signings. Most of them have been like the local libraries around Memphis. Got a good friend of mine who works for libraries, so I've done several events with her and talks. And during the pandemic, we did a lot of Zoom talks and met up with some people. And I've done a few live ones, and they're always fun, until you get a few where you show up and like the first one I did with her, it was pouring down rain. I get there and there's 2 people there, so it was it became a conversation, which is good, but it's not always. Neither of them had read my book; they just wanted to get out from the rain. So. But I'd love to do some more. I think doing signings and meeting readers is probably one of the coolest things you get to do. So when somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I read your book and I'm looking forward to the next one," it's like, wow, that's pretty awesome.
It is. Yeah, it really means more than they can imagine when you come across that sort of thing. And I think we both say the same thing. I mean, if you're John Grisham, you have somebody who looks at all these emails and messages that you get, because there's probably a large number. But for me, I get quite a few emails and messages on social media and stuff from readers, and we try to reply to everything. And I love getting them. I think it's great interaction.
Yes, I agree with you totally. And I try to answer every one of them as timely as I can, because sometimes it takes a couple of days to get back around to them. But I usually answer every one of them because I just think it's neat that they respond. I mean, even the ones that I've had a few are less than nice, but most people who respond, almost all, been just amazing people, and actually develop some relationships with them along the way. So it's neat how that works. And I really can't imagine, like I was a big John Grisham fan. I met him a couple of times. I can't imagine like dropping him an email and him responding back to me. That would have been just the coolest thing ever. So.
All right. Well, let's move the second question to maybe the next show, since we're running a little long, and get straight to the interview portion with best-selling author, Mr. Nick Thacker.
Today's guest is going to be Nick Thacker, who's a very prolific writer who's got, how many books do you have out right now, Nick?
I just say 40 plus because I can't count that high. So
more than your hands and fingers and hands and toes. Right?
Well, I got more than my hands and fingers. So I'm like, all right, well, I reached the end of that list. So
let's do it by series. How many series do you have?
That's a trickier one. I mean, it shouldn't be trickier, but again, being very unintelligent, it's very tricky for me. My main series has like 14 books in it. I've got another series that has 3 going on 4. Well, and then I've started like 100 series. That's the problem. I've got like 1 book in all the rest of the series. So 40 plus, let's just say that.
So that's the business model you teach, is it, for authors? Just start 1 book in a series and then go on to another one?
That's the one that I fell into. I just got so frustrated, and I was like, I'm tired of this Harvey Bennett guy. I'm just kill him off. And everyone was like, if you kill him off, we'll kill you. So I said, okay, well, fine. I'll just start 8 new series before I write another Harvey Bennett book.
So when did you start? When did you first publish your first book?
That was back in 2012. 2014, I think, is the date on Amazon for that first one, which is called The Atlantis Stone. Originally, it was called The Golden Crystal. But yeah, I never wanted to write anything. I was done after high school. I was, F you all. I hate you guys. Make me read these stupid literature books. I was from Texas, right? So I'm like, intelligence and reading and all those kind of things. But we didn't want to waste time with that. So I was like, I'm done. I'm never going to write anything ever again. And my granddad died 2011, I believe. And kind of as a gift to my dad, his son, I was like, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write something the kind of book that we all wrote, that we all read, And that became the Golden Crystal, which was horrendous in every way. I mean, it was awful, just completely off base market wise. Didn't know what I was doing. The story was in there. It was fun, but it just needed to be edited. And kind of ironically, I was blogging about the process at the time. And somebody, one of my many 2 or 3 readers that I had, emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm an air traffic controller. I'm going to retire, and I'd love to edit books as my second career. Would you let me edit your book for free in exchange for a good testimonial?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." He did a bang up job. He fixed the hell out of it. It was totally readable. I should have put his name on the cover. I always joke with him. Full circle, and I know this isn't, you guys didn't ask this, but that became the first book. Full circle. It was like 7 or 8 years later. I'm in Hawaii. I get a call. It's the same guy. And he's like, "Hey, I'm a writer now, and I'm writing books." And now we're like best buds. His name is Mike Morehouse. You guys may know him.
Okay, yeah.
Writes an MP McDougal. So he's a great dude. He edited my first book. He's done some of my audiobooks now, and we've kept in touch over the years. So kind of cool. I mean, ultimately, that's why I think I kept doing this, was because it's such you guys know, it's such a small community of people who just are masochists. We're like, "I want to write a book," and that sounds like fun, and we do it. And then there's like more of us, and we find each other, and we're like, "Well, shit, I guess I got to keep going because these guys are doing it." Yeah, but it's such a great community, us writer folk.
Yeah, it's like many trades. When you look at the people doing it, you go, "How hard can it be?"
Dude, that's exactly what I thought. Believe it or not, and I always tell this story because it's really funny. I literally have like a very vivid memory of talking to my wife in the muddy middle, right, or the muddle of this stupid book, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. This is hard. I thought it was going to be easy because I read all these books and they all kind of, they're suck in a certain way, and I figured I could do better. And this is really hard. And she was like, "Yeah, we all knew that would be hard, And I'm like, "Well, I didn't know. Nobody told me." I literally had the thought, I wonder if anyone's ever written a book about like how to write a novel, like how to outline this thing or how to craft characters. And I got on Amazon and I was like, "Oh, look at that. There's a couple, there's people have done this before." So I had no idea. That's how naive I was. I had no idea. I was ignorant, completely ignorant. And it opened up. I took 6 months off and read all these books and then came back to it, finished the book, and that became the Golden Crystal.
That's a good question, actually. Doug, have you read any of the how-tos, craft, and all that stuff? Are you edumacated?
I saw him start to sweat because he thought you were going to ask if he's read my books, and he was like, I saw the bead of sweat drip down his forehead.
No, I'm not reading any books. No, I've read a few of those how-tos, and I found them to be somewhat not helpful. But but then again, I suck, so it's one of those things.
Why are they? You don't think they're helpful?
Some of them are. I mean, some of them are really good. There's been what was probably one of the best ones as far as talking about story was it Robert McKee? Fabulous one. Yeah. I mean,
that's like the Bible, man. Things like a tome.
Yeah, it took a while to get through. Yeah, but I think that sometimes you get, I loved On Writing by Stephen King, but at the same time, he also writes a specific way that I don't necessarily write.
Yeah, and that was, for me, mostly memoir than it was craft.
Right.
Yes. He was just showing, hey, this is what's worked for me. I highly recommend, heroin, microdosed over the course of 24 hours, stay drunk the whole time. And I'm like, okay, pump the brakes, buddy. Like, leave stuff for the rest of us,
Yeah, be stoned.
Yeah, once anybody knows you're a writer, they're like, "Oh, here, I've got this copy of this book," and I've probably gotten 3 copies of that book at least from people who are like, "I read this half of it, but I'm not a writer, so you mightn't like it."
Yeah, great book, but just not really a craft one.
No, it's not. And maybe I should, and I'm sure there's lots of people that read my books who go, "This guy needs to read some books on how to write a book." But I haven't. And I actually was listening to a podcast, and this is terrible of me because I forget the name of it, of who it was. But they were talking about intuitive writers. Oh, it was Joanna Penn's. And they were talking about intuitive writers that intuitively know how to put structure and characters together in a book, who can actually get derailed by trying to follow a given structure because they actually lay it all out. And I started listening to it and I'm saying, that sounds pretty pretentious to me. And, or an excuse for not reading more books. So I was like, oh, maybe I should use that one because it's good for me. But it actually started making sense the more she talked about it. It was, oh gosh, I'm terrible. We'll put it in the show notes because I'll look it up and put it in there. But I'm going to butcher her name if I say it. But she's actually coaches a lot about writing and what have you. And it was pretty interesting. And I think there's a certain amount of truth to that because I think for some of us, we accidentally put in a lot of the structure that people talk about. It sort of naturally forms as we write. Do you find that?
I do. I feel like, I'm more than 15 years into this thing now, almost 15 years into it, which doesn't sound like much, but remember from a high school kid who said he would never write anything. Now I'm writing full time. It's a lot of writing, multiple millions of words and, a lot of books out. I'm pretty good at certain things. And one of those things I think is the intuition of knowing how a story needs to go. And all that said, I still like that structure. I still like having that outline in front of me. I'm not an intuitive writer. I don't write from the seat of my pants, as they say. I have to have that outline, mostly because I'm dictating and I need to have just one chunk of very specific story in my mind when I go drive and dictate. But all that to say, I've tried not writing with an outline, and what ends up happening is a story structure that follows very specific beats. I have a midpoint, there's a twist, and I've got an inciting incident and a hook way up front. And those things are very natural because that's what storytelling is. And, I challenge anyone to find a story that's considered good and also mainstream, because there's good stories that are, specifically not within that structure, but that's on purpose usually. But I challenge anyone to find something that's considered good, genre fiction, mainstream, that doesn't follow the vast majority of these beats. And I would even argue that it's probably not on purpose. These authors did it intuitively. So I love structure because for an author who may not know that intuition, it's right there. Just do this and a story will pop out. Of course, I'm oversimplifying it, but for us, I think all three of us are the same. We can look at a story and in our head and say, well, I know how to do this. I know how to get from point A to point B to point Z all the way through. And it's going to fall and it's going to come out like a story. And the creativity is going to be in moving those beats around a little bit, massaging them to make it fun to read. That comes with practice. That comes with time and sometimes talent and luck, But I think all three of us are in that first category. But yeah, I don't think there's any right way or wrong way to do it. Again, freebasing heroin might be one of the ways I would say. Maybe not. Like maybe don't use Stephen King's model.
For Hunter S. Thompson, yes.
Yeah.
But hey, to each their own, man. I'm not going to judge. Like whatever.
So, you talk about what you read. What are some of your favorite authors, or the things that you found as influential that got you to where the genre you're in?
There's two big ones. I'm not firmly in the tropical thriller category like you two. I've dabbled in that. I've left it for people like you who do it better. But I write action adventure thrillers is what I say. So Dan Brown, Clive Cussler, those kind of guys. My favorite author in that genre, the trad pub side, is James Rollins. He got me into it back in college, really high school, when I was lifeguarding. I would sit at this pool and I would read on the lifeguard stand all day long. Now, to be fair, this was a new development, so people hadn't even moved in yet, but they had the pool done. And so legally they were required to have a lifeguard. So there was nobody at the pool. But I was getting paid like $12 an hour to just sit on a lifeguard stand. I read every single James Rollins book that he had that summer. So
I love that. There's nobody visible above the surface of the pool.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there may have been people in the pool, but how the hell was I supposed to know? I was looking at my book the whole time. So I always mention James Rollins because he's just a great dude. I've met him in person a couple times. The other one, probably the one that got me really into the writing side, was Dan Brown. I'm aging myself here, but I read the Da Vinci Code senior in high school. I was sitting down for a test and I finished the test, because I'm a genius and everyone else was still taking it because they're dumb Texans. And I had all this time to read. I had grabbed the Da Vinci Code off my dad's nightstand and took it to school and thinking, all right, I'll try again. These stupid big old books like literature, I hate them all. And I read it and I was hooked. I was like, you gotta be kidding. This is amazing. I'm not talking about his writing style. I thought it was fine, whatever. People always bash him for that, but whatever. It was easy to read. And he made me think, and he had included the science and the history and the exotic places. And I thought, hell, if there's anything else like this, I'm going to find it. And that's how I found James Rollins and Clive Cussler and all those guys. So now when I write, that's my kind of formula, is something prototype, something scientific, something historical. If I can tie it back to the Nazis, not everybody loves hating on the Nazis, right? Everyone wants to kill a Nazi, right? And then something someplace exotic. That's it. That's what I do. So that's kind of, it all came from Dan Brown. So those are the two big ones that I always mention.
It always baffles me why everyone bags on Dan Brown.
Because he's more successful than them. That's why.
That's the main thing. It's like there's trillion people that have bought his books.
You want to find failed authors? Go look at 1-star reviews.
We're going to do a whole show on reviews, I think, one time. You
should. Have you seen mine? I did Dave Behrens and I read our 1-star reviews. Fascinating stuff.
I think I stole the idea from you, actually.
Oh, do it. It's fun. It's good therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some doozies. So what elements do you have when you're starting a book? What elements of that story do you need before you actually put pen to paper? Do you have to outline the whole thing, or you just have a piece of it?
I do. Now, let me answer this two ways. If I'm not dictating, which is rare, I'm probably not going to sit down and type a whole book. I'll type part of it, but I'm not ever going to do that again because it's not fast enough. I don't type fast enough. So I usually dictate the whole thing, which means, again, I have to have an outline that's pretty granular. It's pretty specific. I want to know the setting. If I don't have settings labeled in the outline, every building becomes government beige. I love that descriptor, and I use that. And I'll be talking, open quote, she said, it's the building, or, open quote, it's the building that looks government beige, close quote, she said, or whatever. I just do that. Every building becomes the same. So I have to specifically say, don't fucking call the thing government beige. Like, do something, call it green, or, whatever. That's the kind of detail that goes into my outlines because I know my habit, right? If I'm not doing that, if I'm not dictating and I just need an outline, I don't usually have to have the whole thing. I need to know the scientific thing that I want to put in there. I want to know the history. I want to know how do I tie these together? That's the creative fun for me, right? How do I make Nazis have something to do with bullet ants in South America? Like what are they? Are they grabbed them and grabbed the serum out of them and used it for some kind of evil experiment on eugenics? Like, great, there we go. That's the whole thread. Now I can do the history flashbacks. I can do the science expedition down to to Peru or whatever. And then I usually put it someplace exotic because I'm super lazy and I don't want to do a bunch of research. So if I put it in Philadelphia, people have been there. I haven't. My readers have all been. I've never been there, but my readers have all been there. I've know what Philadelphia looks like. There's not rolling hills and everything smells like smoke. It looks like Detroit or whatever. I don't know. So I put it in Antarctica, and they're like, "Well, I've never been to Antarctica." I'm like, "Yeah, you haven't. There's trees there. Sue me." No one can question me if I put it somewhere they've never been. So someplace exotic, but it gives that kind of world traveler kind of feel, which is a big part of what I like in my fiction. So that's it. I mean, that's really the formula. I need those three pieces. I usually need more than that. I need to know who the character is, but that's pretty much resolved these days since I have all these series. I'm like, okay, well, that guy's going to get to do this one. Cool. Well, that's Shane Riley. Well, he's Australian, so he talks a certain way. Everything is crikey and shrimp on the Barbie, right? Yeah, I've never been to Australia. I'm pretty sure that's super accurate. But the point is, I already
been to a lot of Outback, haven't you?
I've been to the restaurant. I mean, they all eat the blooming onions.
That's a blooming onion.
That's what it's like. That's what they all do down there. Trust me. I'm a writer. So, the character I need to know, but I don't have to worry about that, me personally, because I've written all these different series. I just drop one in. I'm like, well, is this a techno thriller? Great. Josh Lane gets to do it. Is it somebody, some rich guy needs to find something? Well, that's a Shane Riley book, So that sort of kind of resolves itself. And then the last thing I'll say before I shut up is I have noticed about my own writing that characters were hard. Everybody in my books, male or female, became a middle-aged, sarcastic white guy. Everybody sounded the same. They looked the same. They acted the same. I was like, shit, I don't know how to write these fucking characters. So I backed off. I read some books on how to develop characters, got a little better at it, I hope. But even still, I will say this. I think in my genre, probably in yours too, the plot has to come first, but you can't do it without characters have to do the thing in your plot, right? But unlike literature or literary fiction, some of the commercial genres, like some of the romance stuff is really big on character. What we do, that plot has to be really fun. That's going to hook the reader. They're going to pick it up because of the plot, but they're going to fall in love because of the character. So if I do my job well, they're going to buy the book because the plot is fun. Oh, cool. It's bullet ants and Nazis and, Antarctica. Great. But if I can't get them to fall in love with one of my characters, they're not going to fall in love with the book. So that's kind of the way I approach a book when I'm first starting out is, a little formula and then who's in it and how do we make them lovable.
Doug, I mean, you're pretty much a pantser, right?
I have an outline. It's not detailed. I like to jump between, like, I know where it's going to end and I know how it's going to start. And I usually try to put a couple of good action points in between and just figure out where I'm going to go. So I don't plot the whole thing out. I do sit there and in my head, at least I have a good idea of where I'm going to go. I couldn't dictate. I've given that a shot even with an outline, and it's way too much editing afterwards, and I hate that. So
I have a whole course about that.
I know. I saw that. I was like,
you should check it out. You should check it out. I can help you with that. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm a horrible typist. I type really slow, which is absolutely perfect for me because my brain thinks really slowly. So every line I edit as I'm doing the line because I get to the end of the line, then I go fix it, rewrite it. And then the next morning I go through the chapter I just did. I hate editing. Absolutely despise editing. So these people that do, once I did the 5th draft, I got it cleaned up and I was happy with it. It's like 5th draft.
Have you heard of these people that write like long form? Like they write with a piece of paper?
Yes.
Oh,
my
man.
gosh.
Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, we have technology for this now.
Yeah.
That's the masochist. When you talk about masochists, those are the ones right there who are like, I'm going to write it out longhand, then I'm going to type it out. That's my second draft. And then I'm going to.
Oh, it's so cathartic. I'm like, no, drinking is cathartic. And you're leading me to drink.
Yeah, I couldn't do
That's
that.
just painful. I can't even read my own handwriting. Maybe I'd write it out once and go back and go, what was the guy's name?
Yeah, I jot down notes occasionally and then I look back at them. I'm like, what did I say? I've got no
That guy's
idea
not
what
even
I
in the
wrote
book.
down.
Who's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
He is now. That's all I know.
I'm weird. I don't have to have I'm weird. I could just end the sentence there. But in plotting, to start a book, I don't know what I have to have. I have to have something, but I often don't know what the ending is. I'm pretty much, I do a lot of dual timeline stuff with my AJ Bailey books. So I kind of need to know what era I'm going to set it back in. And one of the things that's actually helped me have a little bit more structure starting off is pre-orders. Because do you pre-order your stuff, Nick?
I don't. I'm like one of the few that doesn't. I keep trying it, and then like I'm pretty disciplined. If I say I'm going to finish a book by February 5th, the book's going to be done by February 5th, unless I set it up for pre-order. Like a year, I'd be like February 5th, 2025. Let's do it. And then 2025 comes up, and I'm like, I don't think I forgot anything, but well, okay. And then and then like January 30th, they're like, Amazon's like, hey fucker, like we need your book, which is that's what they call. I don't know if you guys get that as well, but that's what they call it.
All the time.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's everybody, right? And then I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot about the book. I forgot about it. Okay, shit. And I'm like, trying to write the whole thing, and it's bad. So I don't do that anymore. I'll probably go back to it. I always say I like to test stuff. I'm kind of the guy that likes to experiment with everything. So I'll go back and forth with it. I'll test it again. Like dropping prices, I'll do that. I'll try pre-orders again. But right now, I don't. I'm trying to write 23 books in 2023. At this point, it's not going to happen. I'm already 2 books behind, but whatever. The point is I'm going to write fast. I'm going to write a lot. And so I don't want to limit myself to very specific hard day. I didn't know I was going to do a course, and Dale Roberts of Self-Published with Dale, is a friend of mine. He texted me. He was like, hey man, I'm trying to figure out how to dictate. You should do a course. And so I was like, I'm going to do a course right now. And like, I sat down and just like didn't stop. I just did a whole course and lost a whole week of writing time, but I made money on the course. So it was fine. But that's kind of why I don't like to do pre-orders, because I'm like, ooh, a bird. Oh, look at that. A squirrel. I get distracted by all kinds of business shit that I shouldn't be worried about, but I am. So I don't pre-order right now. If anybody's listening to this thinking they shouldn't, don't listen to me. I think most authors I know are doing better with pre-orders than not.
One of the benefits when we were talking about, plotting is I'm putting out a measly, I feel completely inadequate in your present Thacker. I'm only putting out, I get that. I'm dropping to one knee as I said. I only put out 4 a year plus some of the collabs and stuff that we're doing. So yeah, it's so slow, but I have 2 series. So I put out 2 books in each series. So now do the maths on that is every 6 months there's a book coming out. So now 6 months ahead, I need to put the pre-order, right? So book 13 just came out. I needed the pre-order for the next one. So I need a cover, I need a title, and I need some form of blurb to put in there. And putting in like the placeholder blurb, I got emails about that. I only got one actually, but only one person complained. But boy, did they complain.
But one email represents like 4 billion people on the internet, though. So
absolutely, of course it does. Yeah, so that's what I say when I only get one complimentary email too. Yeah, so it forces you to put together some idea of what that story is going to be about, and now you have an anchor for it. Over the next 6 months, I've got it brewing in the back of my mind instead of those, because I'm a golden retriever as well. I mean, you throw a ball and I'm running after it. So, which is why I'm in the mess I'm in, trying to write 4 collab books alongside my books now. But yeah, it helps me in a more structured manner put a story together before I start. So I've got a better idea going into it, I think.
I think that's a great way to do it too. It kind of percolates, For me, there's so many options. Like Nazis, yeah, that's an easy one to go to. But what else? Like, okay, well, Russia's kind of a big deal right now. China's a big scary thing with balloons and all that. These are the bad guys that show up in the books, but it can be much closer to home. The point is the sky is the limit. Going with the spy balloon analogy, I get so carried away with well, okay, I've already done the Chinese, I've already done the Russians, I've already done Nazis 1,000 times. Who can I make the bet? Well, let's just make it this one guy who's American and we don't know, and then I start, well, what does he do? And then I build this whole thing and I'm like, I just need to limit myself. So let's do bullet ants with Nazis in Antarctica. Like, let's just keep writing that book over and over again. Let's find Atlantis for the 15th time. Who cares?
Right.
But I need to limit myself. And that's what having a pre-order with the blurb, when you said that, I was like, yeah, that would be beautiful. Because I could know that's what the book is. That's it. It's just in this little neat box. The Nazis are just going to do their thing and they're going to be Nazis. We're not going to make them good guys. Like, we're not doing any of that crap. We're not doing any of the creative stuff. We're not going to be, genius. We're just going to write a damn book. That's what I need most of the time. And I don't give myself that. And so I wander and then I'm sitting there dictating and I'm like, what if the Nazis were good guys? How do we make that work? And then, nobody wants that.
Yeah. So here's a shocker. Not all Germans were Nazis. I know.
All of them. Every single German.
Crazy.
Even today. Every single one today. They're all Nazis, right?
Crazy thought here, but they weren't all Nazis. How about that?
All Chinese are evil little people and all Russians are spies and all Germans are Nazis. Like, this was taught to me in Texas public school.
Yeah. So I'm actually someone who's been to China. And in fact, I've been all the way across China from Hong Kong to Beijing in a car.
It's probably so. You can tell by the accent. You can tell by the accent he's a spy. So, he's trying to uncolonize us, I think is what it is. So.
And Bond, James Bond. It's a story for another time, but yeah, we did a rally and we drove all the way across China.
So, quick question: you have 23 books you're hoping to do this year, or if you're behind, like 20. I assume that's across all your series. How do you keep all your characters straight?
They're all the same character. Like I said, they're all just the same guy. One just has like a chip in the back of his skull that helps him with stuff. So that's the techno thriller. But they're all the same guy. I got Josh Lane, I got Jim Riker, I got Jack Barr. I mean, they all start with J, literally. I mean, they're Harvey Bennett's the one exception, and that was painful to name him.
Well, you have Mason,
it's close
right?
to J
Mason
in the
Dixon.
alphabet. Yeah, Mason was the other one, but that just named himself,
And they're all you.
Yeah, they're all me. Middle-aged white guys, sarcastic middle-aged white guys, even the women, even the female characters. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, it's easy enough to keep them straight. I've got some persona documents on each one. It's an app that you can character sheet and all that. I don't spend a whole lot of time because inevitably whatever I end up writing will be different than what I've planned. And so that character sort of reveals himself. I'm going to start sounding super pretentious, and I promise I'm not. Like, I don't do the whole like discovery. Let's just figure out who the writer is. Let's let him speak to me. Bullshit. I don't do that. But I got to admit, I'm starting to write, and a few chapters into it, he's doing something, and I didn't know he likes boxing. That's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So that becomes who the character is because of whatever. And at that point, it kind of solidifies in my brain. I'm 3 or 4 or 5 chapters into it, and I'm like, okay, I know who this guy is. I know what he's doing. I know what his strengths are. I know what his weakness is. I know his Achilles heel. That happened with Shane Riley, the one that it hasn't even dropped yet. I was originally going to co-write it, pulled back on that because I wrote a whole outline and it never happened. So I'm writing it now, and it's a super fun book. Like a village of eyeless villagers in North Korea is kind of like the little thing, right? But the guy's name is Shane Riley. He's an ex-Australian special forces soldier who's now like a.
Hey, wait. He's ex-Australian?
He's an ex-Australian.
Or he's Australian.
Yeah,
he's Australian. And he's ex-special.
He doesn't live in Australia anymore. He escaped. He got out. He's not in the penal colony because every Australian's a prisoner. We know that, right? Just,
absolutely.
As far as the English are concerned, yeah.
Yeah, right. No, so he's a retriever. Now he literally goes and finds things for people. His special skill is to go hunt things down. He's got a moral compass, but it's gray. And so he'll go find things and do what needs to be done to get the thing back as long as someone pays him enough money. His one exception, his one rule is that he doesn't retrieve people. He doesn't go get people. He doesn't want anything to do with that, right? So, of course, the first chapter, he's diving. He's actually off the coast of New Zealand. See, he's not Australian. And he's diving looking for, and I didn't know what it was. But I'm like, he's diving. I know that there's going to be somebody that drives up on a boat above him, and he's going to come back up and be like, what you guys want, And they kidnap him and take him, and then the book starts. But I didn't know what he was diving for until I'm writing this chapter. And all of a sudden, I realized, this guy needs closure because his wife was murdered by dumping her car out of a ship into the ocean where he's diving, and he's looking for the car and her body to get closure. And I'm like, well, hell, that's a pretty intense, backstory.
Yeah, very, very.
No plan whatsoever. That wasn't in the original outline at all. It was just, who's Kate? What's she doing? Oh, she's dead. She's down here. That's who he's looking for. So he comes back up. And he's like, I don't want to go with you guys. I'm busy. And they're like, what are you doing? You working? He's like, nope, I don't need money right now. I'm good. I'm doing something else. And then, of course, they're like, it's not a request, and he gets on the boat and goes, and that's launches him into the book. So it's really fun, but that happens all the time. So I don't like to limit myself to say, okay, well, Harvey Bennett is this. I go with the Dwight Swain thing. I'll do a noun of vocation and an adjective of merit or something like that, right? So he'll be a reclusive park ranger, right? That's about all I'll do. That's enough for me personally, who writes terrible characters, again, to go and make him what I need him to be, which is just a cardboard silhouette of, no, I'm just kidding. That usually gives me enough to go off of.
This has been fantastic. So to wrap up, what have you got coming out next of your 23?
I am very close to finishing the draft on Harvey Bennett 14, I think it is. Haven't landed on the title yet. It's something going to be Russian. They're all, of course, spies over there, as we all know.
All Russians.
So it's a book about spies. Yeah. And caves. Harvey Bennett hates caves, so every book he ends up in a cave, which I think is hilarious, but probably boring for my readers. But hey, 14 books into it, you got to kind of stick to the script.
And what's the most recent one that came out?
The Contestant. That was the techno thriller. That was book 1 of the Josh Lane. That one was hard. That, strangely, for whatever reason, took me like a year to write. I kept coming back to it, but it's a fantastic book, if I do say so, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a real through and through techno thriller, with all the tropes and everything. And I think I nailed it. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger because it got to be a little unwieldy, so I just cut it and went to the second one. So warning, it's a book, but it does end with the main thread not being resolved. So, but at this point in the game, I don't think any of my readers, I don't think they thought it was going to be just one and done. They know there's going to be 15 books in this stupid series now.
Yeah, and they only have to wait a week or two and the next one will be out.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. So what we do on this show is this really silly thing where we spin a wheel and we have 10 questions on the wheel, which Douglas has there.
Look at that. Too bad nobody can read that handwriting.
Well, it's a good job this is an audio podcast.
Right,
so the key is the sound that it's... How about that? Huh?
Folks, that is real effects. That's practical effects right there. That was not added in post.
So the question we have for you, Nick, today is, what is your least favorite movie?
August Rush.
Oh, my son.
Remember that shit?
Yes.
Remember this drivel? I was in music school. I was literally getting a composition degree, and this fucking movie comes out, and they're like, this guy can see music in electrical wires and then plays it like Mozart. And I'm like, that's not fucking real, guys. Stop thinking that. And everybody in my network, minus the music people, were like, that's totally real. You can be a prodigy. And I'm like, yes, that's not what that is, though. It's totally wrong. It's totally false. The acting is horrendous. Robin Williams shows up as some weird pedophile, and then which is just pissed everybody off, And I'm like, this doesn't even know what it's supposed to be. It's up there with Happy Feet, another weird Robin Williams movie, right? But the whole point is that one just made me so angry. It was like, I don't even want to I was best friends with a cellist who went to Berkeley, and the very end of it, they're playing Bach's Prayer, which doesn't look like this, right? That's not how that goes. And every single scene where anyone's playing anything, I'm like, that I play guitar, I play piano. That's not how that looks, Chopin doesn't do that. It's whatever. So it was just, everything was wrong. It's not hard to get right. That's what pissed me off.
Right.
It's not hard to do a movie about music and prodigies and have it be real. But that one made me angry.
You can say that to Hollywood about every subject, sport, anything. Coming from a background in motor racing, there has never been, well, actually, since the 60s when they made Le Mans and Grand Prix, they are by far the best racing movies. Everything they've made since is complete drivel.
Except Need for Speed, right? That one was pretty.
Yeah. Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was right, I thought, right?
Days of Thunder has one realistic scene in it, and that's the rental car chase scene, because that, I can tell you stories has happened. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Fast and Furious franchise is also quite Michael Bay does hold accuracy at a pretty high standard in his movies, I'm pretty sure.
I do like how we, as writers who make shit up for a regular day, are like, no, that's not at all accurate in this book, in this movie.
It makes me angry because when I put a safety on a Glock, and then I'm like, the whole book was fucking accurate, minus the stupid Glock. Just forget it. And then you watch these stupid movies like August Rush and, Days of Thunder, and you're like, what the fuck? This isn't even close. Or any military movie. My God. I know, the insignia is wrong. Okay, cool. Well, you got to be pretty obvious for me to notice that,
Try calling it a clip or a magazine or vice versa, and man, you get just yelled at about that too.
He stuck the clip in his gun. Oh, did he? Now, did he really?
I've got ARC readers who just jump all over that stuff. So fortunately, they have a good filter
at this point in the
system,
game, I do too. We got a bunch of gun porn nuts, so that's easy enough to get rid of most of that. But at this point, I just say it's a gun. It's a gun. It went bang bang. Somebody died. Neck shot. Boom.
And my main character is AJ Bailey, and she's this English young lady in the Cayman Islands. So she's just scared shitless of guns. She hates guns. So Perfect. It's really easy. He had a big gun.
It's her perspective.
Yeah. She really hates guns, and she absolutely hates guns that are pointed at her. So they're just guns. So it's easy then. All right. I think we've offended enough people for one show. Nick, thank you for being here and making our show twice as long as it's supposed to be.
Of course. I'm happy to help.
Always great to chat with you. Really appreciate you being here. And we'll definitely have you on again because I'm pretty sure we can get some more good stories out of you.
Oh, for sure, man. Anytime. Thanks for having me. Loved being here.
Well, that was a ton of fun with Nick Thacker. He's an entertaining guy, and we'll be sure to get him back on the show at some point. So thank you very much for listening in.
Yes, and remember to subscribe to our show. Give us a review. Those help a lot. And check out the show notes for links to our books and social media, as well as anything we might have mentioned during the program. And if you can, support the show by buying our books or gifting them to other people.
Great. And on our next episode, we'll be discussing shifting gears, and our guest will be James Hinchcliffe, who shifted his gears from being a successful race car driver into the commentating booth. Look for the new episode in 2 weeks.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Until then, be cool to each other.
And fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors Chat Show with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt.